Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Jack, I'm the Avid Assistant, and in this one we're just going to be going over scripting macros for post. So just automating tasks to assist with your workflows. Now scripting is amazing. You can write a script to help you do all kinds of things. You know, from speeding up, really menial tasks or repetitive tasks, all the way through to actually adding functionality to an application like Media Composer that it doesn't have natively. Yeah, it's awesome. Now, before we start, I will say that first of all, this is going to be scripting in macOS only. Sorry, Windows users, might go into that another time, scripting on Windows, but I've primarily always worked on Macs, so I'm much more familiar with it. I have done a couple of jobs on Windows, and I can tell you that the platform I'd use there is AutoHotkey, if you want to go and look into that more. And maybe I'll do a video of that down the line, but I will need a Windows computer to be able to do that. So, macOS. Yes, I will be using Keyboard Maestro, which is my platform of choice for creating macros and scripts for, all my different workflows. And yeah, it's great. You can make scripts of all kinds without any kind of coding whatsoever. Unlike AppleScript or AutoHotkey or things like that, where you would have to actually write lines of text, similar but not quite coding, Keyboard Maestro will allow you to do this inside a GUI. And just drag and drop actions, and it's really great. So we'll run through that first, and then we'll get into showing some examples of scripts that I've made specifically for this video to show you some stuff.
Right, so this is Keyboard Maestro, my preferred platform for scripting macros. I'll give you a quick run through of the basic layout, how we'd go about creating a macro, and then I'll run you through a bunch of examples. First showing you the whole macro in depth and all the steps, and then I'll show you running. So this is our window. Now we're divided into three main areas. The first one is groups. Now, groups are essentially just folders containing macros. This is just how you'll organize them into different categories. So I might have specific macros I would make for a certain job that contain file paths and different things unique to that job. And up the top, you have various sort of smart folders. So the top two are one, all macros, if you just can't remember where you had put something. Enabled macros will just filter out any ones that you've disabled, so you can disable any point, and you can create more smart groups with more filters to suit whatever your needs are. So I've created one group down the bottom here called the Avid Assistant, and this is where we'll be focusing for this video. Now you have these little plus and minus buttons down here at the bottom of the column, and that's how you'll be able to create and delete a group or a folder. And this enable and disable group. So this will disable a group and all containing macros. And this button over here is also to add a smart group, a smart folder with filters. Moving on, so once you've selected your group inside here, this next column you'll be able to see all the macros contained within it. Now, you just select the various macros to bring it up in the third window. And then the buttons down the bottom are just the same as it was for groups. So plus and minus to create or delete a macro, and the little tick to enable or disable it. So I'll just show you that just now. So if I were to go plus, and then it's created a new one, and the first thing we'll do is give it a name. So say test macro. Now this here will be the icon by default, but you can change that to be A, any image you like, or B, if you want it to be in application icon, you can do that just by double clicking on it, selecting applications, and then picking the application that you want. So say for example, if we wanted this to show the Avid logo, there we go. We just click Avid and it would show it. You can have it show the Frame.io logo, Avid link, whatever this macro is primarily going to be in. I usually have it just show the application icon, but you can also have it show a character, a symbol, any kind of image that you can think of can be the logo there. Then once you've set your logo, if you want to bother with it, you don't really have to, and the name of your macro, The first thing that you're going to want to look at is just how this macro is going to be triggered. Now you can always set this at the end after you've scripted it, but I like to set this at the very start because I'm going to be triggering it several times as I'm making it just to test it. So, new trigger, there. Now you have a lot of options here as to what triggers a macro. Now this can be the creation of a folder, it can be the launching of an application, you can have an macro triggered just by a specific time of day. There's all kinds of triggers, and you can utilize all or a whole multiple of these for different types of macros to create a whole lot of functionality. But probably the most common trigger of all is a hotkey. So we're going to start there. So I'll just click hotkey trigger, and then you'll be brought up with this little window here. So when this key is pressed, when it's long pressed, when it's released, when it's tapped 3 or 4 times. So by default it's when it's pressed, when you hit this key. But again, you have a whole lot more options as to what triggers it. And you just, when this is highlighted, any key that I type, so if I'm going to type F13, then F13 is now the trigger for this macro. So when I fill out my string with the script, F13 will be what triggers it. Now, if you're going to use hotkeys, the one thing I'll say is to just keep a track of what keys you assign and where. If you do end up with a double up, then when you go to run one of the doubles, Keyboard Maestro will ask you which one it is that you want to run, and then that will give you a bit of a warning, and you can go in and tweak it, like change one to Shift 13 or something like that. But if you're going to end up having a lot of these, you can run out of hotkeys very quickly. So you can look into either having other triggers or having an extended functionality pad like a loop deck or a Elgato Stream Deck or something like that will allow you to get much more in depth into this. Anyway, moving down, you can have it be triggered by those or by a script or by another macro. But down here is where we will create our macro. Just start here by hitting New Action. And now you get the Actions window will pop up. Now this pops up on a slider basis, so it will just come and go as needed. And you can see here, much like our groups, there's a whole bunch of folders separating out the different types of actions you can put. So for example, music control, next track, play specific track, play pause, different types of notifications, opening files, Safari control. You can also control Chrome as well. Front browser control, so whatever browser's at the front, clipboard, different application controls. There's a whole slew of different things you can do here, but I tend to just always leave this and this smart filter up here of all actions, and then just use the search function, and I will search for whatever I need. But do, by all means, feel free, as I did quite a lot at the start, to browse through these different folders to get an idea of what you can do here, of what you can use it for, because then you'll also become familiar with some of the terminology as to how a lot of these actions are named, and you'll know what to search for and call upon when you need it. But say I wanted to open a file. So if I just hit open, I could go open file, folder, or application, and you would just drag that down onto there. And you can hit this little folder here, search for whatever your file is. So I'm going to say, go to my projects folder and maybe editorial publisher tutorial, sure, why not? This is a tutorial I made when I was working at a studio for one of their tools. And it'll open that with the default application, or you can select a specific application to open this file with. So that's just one of the great many slew of actions that you can drag and drop on and how you'll use it. I do find Keyboard Maestro is one of the most intuitive applications I've ever used. It's really, really nice. Now you can drag and drop the exact things down that you want from here. Like a very common one would be type a keystroke and just hit whatever key it is that you want it to enter there. Or you can also record your keystrokes and Keyboard Maestro will build the application from there. So say for example, if I got rid of those, I'll hit record, I'll start a little timer, so as if you're ready. And then I'm just going to say do WTN. So W is my go to next event, T is my mark all, and N is my make subclip. So if I go WTN, it's going to say insert text by typing. But that will do the same thing as hitting the keystrokes. And now just hit record again to stop the recording. And now this will work as jumping to my next edit, marking, and subclipping. And I've just had, all I've had to do is record the keystrokes that I've done. So I have to go to a sequence with edits and run that. You can see it's done it. Nice. Right, now let's get into some use cases and preconceived macros. So of the examples that I'm going to show in this video for macros, I have 7. And I have divided them into 3 levels. So level 1 are going to be simple macros, mostly just keystrokes and just dragging and dropping very simple actions. Level 2 is going to introduce variables, if statements, and some application switching. And then I have one on level 3 that is adding functionality to Media Composer that wasn't there previously. Level 3 is going to get a bit more complex, but very, very useful. And these are just a few examples that I've cherry picked. I will create a workflow or a script on a sort of as needed basis. So whenever I come across any kind of task that's a bit tedious or menial or something that takes a bit longer than it should, I'll get to work on a macro for it. But yeah, if you want, you can get really deep into this and write macros for all kinds of things. Right, our first example, deleting the MC state file. So this one's just a really simple one, which I've mapped to my F16 key. Now we all know that the MC state file, deleting this can be a very good solution to fixing oddities and odd behavior with Media Composer. It is the file that saves the opening state of Media Composer, and it will be regenerated by Media Composer when you next launch. So if you were to quit Media Composer, delete the file, relaunch, it can quite often fix the problem that you're having. Now, as a little side note, I feel like I have to say now, you should try the 3 R's before deleting your MC state, which is restart the application, reboot your machine, and recreate user settings. Because more often than not, one of those 3 will fix your issue before deleting the MC state well. But anyway, I digress. Back to the macro. So I've only got 2 actions in this very, very simple script. And the first one is called prompt for user input. And this is just where it's going to pop up a message box and ask us a question. And so in this action, which I've dragged in from my actions, I've put the title as MC state. This is just the title of the window. Prompt is the question that it's going to ask. So put trash MC state, like, are you sure you want to trash MC state? And then we've got an OK and cancel buttons that come up. So our OK will just continue on with the macro, and cancel will cancel the macro then and there, and won't proceed any further. And if we OK it, our next one is just to trash the specific file, and I've pointed it at the MC state. So I'll show you that running right now. As I'll come out of Keyboard Maestro, and I'm just going to hit my F16 key. And it's just going to ask me, are you sure you want to trash MC state? I don't really want to do that right now. I don't want to force my Avid to have to regenerate that, so I'm just going to hit cancel. But that is our first example. Nice and simple, but very useful and a good key to just have there when you need to do that. Our next example is in a very similar vein. This is a bit more complex, but it is essentially just an extension of the same type of idea. And this is deleting your MDB files. Now this is a macro to delete all of them that I have on my RAID. So first action is open my Avid Media Files folder on my RAID. I have a little pause in here. Quite often if your macros aren't necessarily performing right, especially if you're on a much older machine or not very powerful machine, adding in pauses and little breaks can really help things along. And then I've set it to just resize the window because I'm going to do a mouse click here and I want to point it at specific coordinates, and that just makes that a bit easier because it can predict where they're going to be. Then the mouse click is going to click in the search bar. Then I'm going to insert text by typing .mdb, which will bring up all of our MDB files on the RAID. Then I'm just going to mouse click somewhere in the space of that window. And then I've got a prompt for user input again, which is just, I've titled safety check. And the prompt is, are you sure you want to trash all media databases? So yes, we'll continue and we'll do a Command A to select all and a Command delete to delete them. Or if we hit no, it'll cancel the macro. So I'll run that one right now and you'll see how that works. So I've just hit my F17. I've got my user prompt coming up. Now it's opened the Finder window on my other monitor, but I'll drag that over so you can see what it's done. This window has appeared, much like this, because it happens so fast. And there's all my MDB files, and it's ready to just delete those if I'm ready. And as soon as I would hit yes, those would be erased. Nice, useful. And then Avid would go about scanning my 20 terabyte RAID for quite some time to regenerate all these. So I'm going to hit no on that one. And we'll move on to our next and simplest level 1 macro. So our last one is called rushes trim, and it is essentially just 3 keystrokes. So this is definitely the simplest one that we have here in level 1, but I've just put it at the end because we're adding an if statement here. And I like to add this specific if statement to a lot of my macros. Now, an if statement is just you separating out the string in the macro. So you're saying that if these conditions are met, if this thing happens, if this statement is true, then continue with the macro. Or else, if it's not true, then do this other thing. You can say it to cancel the macro. You can say to just do nothing, no action, which is what I've done here. I've just left it blank, so it just won't do anything if these conditions are met. Now this will be particularly useful. Say you haven't got a Stream Deck or something, you're only using your keyboard to as hotkeys to trigger these macros, and you've got a bunch of macros using different applications. So then say you're using your function keys of say F1 to F12, then you can set F1 to do something different if you're in Media Composer than something else if you're in DaVinci Resolve. So this if statement says if all of the following are true, this application is specified, which is Avid Media Composer, is at the front. So our front application, our front most active application is Media Composer. Then, if that's true, then when I trigger this application, do these things. If it's not, then don't. Very useful, and it'll just prevent you from running the wrong macro, running your DaVinci Resolve one while you're in Avid or something. Now what I use this for is just when I'm reviewing rushes, I like to just drag and drop all of my clips onto a timeline, and then I'll watch them down, and as soon as I hear cut, I'll put an in mark, and then as soon as I hear action, when I get to the next take, I hit my key that triggers this macro, and what it's going to do is just do an O to make a mark out, do an X to extract, edit, and then spacebar to continue playing. So literally just as I'm watching down the rushes, I can also cull them and trim all the fat prior to action and after cut. So I don't have to do that as 2 separate processes or actions, and it saves me a lot of time because I like to work with my rushes in a sequence, in a reel, rather than as clips. So I'll show you this working in the same use case that I just described. Back to Avid we go. Right, so I have dumped onto a timeline here all of the rushes I have for scene 3 in this project. So scene 3 full. And I'm just going to, before I hit play, just make a mark in at the very, very start. and then hit play, and as soon as I get to an action call and after the slate, I will use my script to trim the fat. So first, so we've got our slate, which is always reassuring to see. Just make the action call. There it is. So you could see there, I hit my macro, it trimmed the start, and just kept on playing so that I can review my footage and trim it down as I go, saving me a lot of time. And then as soon as I hear cut, I'll do the same thing. Make a mark in, and then when I hear action on the second take, hit my macro again, and I'll trim it out. Now by the time that I've watched down all the rushes, it'll be trimmed down to just the action. Give me a lot less footage in minutes to have to scrub through. So, on to our level 2 macros. So, the first one we've got here, Avid Upversion. Now, when I'm working, I like to work with one sequence, so say the name of my project, so say KG that I've got open back here. Say I'm going to make an export for my director or whatever. I will make a duplicate of the sequence and underscore the date. And I'll use dates to keep track, both of when I exported it, when I created it, and sort of as a version number. And I have a macro set to do this, to duplicate my sequence, rename it, and launch that sequence ready for exporting. So let's run through this macro right now. So first of all, if all conditions are met, media composers at the front, as before. Type the to keystroke, which is my find bin, so find the sequence in the bin. Type the command D keystroke, so to duplicate that sequence. Right arrow to go to the end, and then I have repeat action. So this is a really useful one to repeat a set designated action or series of actions a designated number of times. So I've set it to repeat hitting the delete key 8 times. So that's just going to trim the .copy.01 from the end that is inevitably made when we duplicate something. Then I'm going to set a variable. Now this is what is making this more of a level 2 macro. Variables are pieces of information that can be edited and changed as the macro evolves and continues. And it also helps you truncate data to much smaller references that you can then call upon and use later on. So I'm setting variable date, so this is the name of my variable, to this. Now this is the formula that I have to call upon the date as year, month, day. And then it's going to insert text by typing underscore and then our date variable. If text appears inside percentage markers, then that is referring to a variable that you set at some point in your script. Then enter to complete the renaming, and enter again to launch that sequence. So here we go, I'll show you this in action in Avid. Right, so I have this old edit of a sequence up here. It is approximately 5 minutes and 40 seconds. And you can see the date up here is the 27th of June. So I'm expecting this kg underscore edit 5 to be changed to kg underscore edit 5 underscore, then the date, and for it to launch it just by one keystroke. Here we go, Avid Upversion. So I'm hitting my keystroke and then I'm going to bring up my hands so as you can see I'm not doing this. And I couldn't have done that anyway because that was way too fast. So kg edit 5, date's there, renamed. You can see that sequence is launched, ready for exporting. So I could add along to this for it to then export it, but I like to create breaks in the workflow to sort of force me to do a check, force me to look at it before doing the export. After all, we can only trust machines so much. Now again, this is just an example. You could set this to be renamed however you like, whatever suits your workflow. You could have it duplicate an Upversion, rename, ready for exporting, however you like. Level 2, example number 2. creating multiple subclips. Now, this actually I added to this video right at the very last minute after I saw somebody asking how to do exactly this on the Avid Editors of Facebook page. And now his use case, as to the description in his post, was that he had one long clip on a sequence and he had added a bunch of edits, and then he wanted to create subclips based on the ad edits that he had made. And he wanted to find out a way to automate this. He was looking to see if there was a way to automate it in Media Composer. Now, you know, if it wasn't all the same clip, he could have used Decompose. But this is an example of how you could use a macro to solve that problem. So please forgive this as being thrown together quite roughly. I have tested it, so I know it works, but it is going to subclip out all of the ad edits, but it won't necessarily rename them. So here we go. If all conditions are met, Media Composer's at the front. Prompt for user input. How many subclips would we like to make? And now we don't just have OK and cancel buttons here. I've added in a variable value here. So this means that it's asking us a question and we need to provide an answer before we hit OK. So my variable is just called subs that I can call upon later. And then how many subs that I'm doing will be however many I enter here. So then I've got a loop, a repeat actions. So execute these actions how many times? And I've just hit subs, so it's going to enter in this variable. So whatever numeric value we entered in as the answer when this pop-up came up, that is going to be how many times we repeat this string of actions. So first of all, I'm going to go T, mark the clip that I'm on, N to subclip, right arrow to go to the end of the rename, repeat these actions 7 times, hit the delete key, so trim the .sub.01 off the end, enter to finalize that, put in a little pause here. Now I've set a move and mouse click because, and this is just to go back to the timeline window. Now in theory I should be able to do this just by going Command 0 to jump back to timeline, but I found that if I didn't click somewhere in the background of the timeline, then it wasn't letting me then mark another clip. It was sort of stuck, which was a bit annoying, but a way around it is just to script a mouse click. And this is just another little feature here for that you can do in macros, is you can look for a found image and then make a mouse click relative to the found image. But this allows us to show off another great little feature of macros, which is being able to find images on the screen. And this really does help us to find mouse click coordinates particularly. So I have taken a screen cap just of all my buttons at the bottom of my record monitor and dropped that in there. And so now my macro is going to look for this found image somewhere on my screen, and I've set it to click 70 pixels below the center of that image. And you can test this just by hitting go, and then the mouse will jump to exactly where those coordinates are. So I can see that it's on the purple, it's on the background of my timeline, so that'll work nicely. I've then added a little pause, a W keystroke to go to next edit, go to the next instance, another little pause, and T. So it's marking the next clip ready to start again. Which shouldn't really be needed, but marking it twice won't do us any problems. So I'm going to tab back to Media Composer and I'll show you this in action. So I have a timeline here where all I've done is just added a few edits. So I have now split into 5 different sections of this video clip, and I have a temp bin up here. And you can see that these are all match frame edits, so you know that this is just one long piece of the same media that's been edited up. So I'm going to run my macro, and then it's going to say how many subclips would you like to make? How many instances are there? So I'm going to hit 5 because I've got 5 sections. It's going to go through, you can see I've got my hands up, I'm not doing this. It's going to go through, subclip out each one, and then remove the .sub.01 from the end. And now we have all of these here. Now they are all named the same. You could have a script or a macro, you could add it into the same macro for renaming these. You could have your assistant do it, you could have another separate macro which will then go through and rename them now, however you want. I've added this right at the very end when I've seen this on Avid editors of Facebook, and so I've thrown this together. But that would be how you would subclip them out. And you can always do a right click autosync to turn those into then clips. Now for this next macro, let me ask you, have you ever looked at an old email you've sent to a client when you've been sending them links? Maybe this is also sending dailies to producers or something like that, and you've copied and pasted the layout so that you're essentially saying the same thing, and not quite edited or updated all the information and made a mistake that way. Or if you've ever done something like that, this will really help you there. So what it's going to do is it's going to switch over to your email client, type out an email, including putting in who it's going to, creating a subject line that is unique to this individual instance of the specific link you're sending, and just prepare the whole email for you, ready to send. So I'll run through all the steps in the string, how it works, and then I'll show you it in action. Right, going through the string. First thing it's going to do is activate mail. So it's going to switch to the mail, your mail client. I just use Apple's mail. It's going to do a quick pause and then the Command N keystroke to create a new mail. Another quick pause, and then insert text by typing. And it's going to type out the emails of whoever your producers or directors are. Then it's going to do a couple of tabs, separated again by a really quick pause. And then we have a prompt for user input titled edit stage. Now this is just to get a couple of pieces of information to fill out the rest of the email. So our prompt is where is the edit at? And then the first one I've just called edit stage. Now this is going to be like what stage your edit's at, whether it's a director's cut, producer's cut, grade notes, online deliverables, you know, what you're doing this edit for. And then edit notes, so anything that you want to say about this cut, you know, really enjoying it, just a few placeholders still there, or still waiting on some footage for this, or still working on the pacing on this end section. Whatever your notes are that you want to let your director know when you're sending the cut. Then I'm going to set the variable for the date like we did in the workflow before. And then, because our tabs above will have got us to the subject line, we can start inserting our text. So insert text by typing. So I've got 1015. I assign a numeric project number to every project I work on. My Avid Assistant ones are always 1015, so you might see that number crop up now and again. And then macro I've put here, just imagining this is the title of our project. And then a space, and then edit stage. So it would be like macro first assembly, for example. And then brackets, and I've got the date put in there. And then another tab, and then an insert text by typing. Now this is going to start typing out the bulk of the email. So I've got, hey guys, please see below for download link to latest edit of macro. And then out I have paste. So this is just one action on its own. It's just going to paste from the clipboard because before I start to run this, I'll have copied the link that I'm sending. Then our last step is just insert text by typing again. Done a few spaces below my link that I've sent, and then my edit notes. So what I have to say on this have been pasted from our message box up ahead. And then when you've had a chance to watch down, we could jump on a call and talk it through, you know, because I'm nice like that. Cheers, Jack. Now let's take a look at this in action. And before we do, I'm just going to tab over to my notes here, and I'm going to copy this text, and we're going to pretend like this is our link. Just pretend like this is a link that we've grabbed from Dropbox or YouTube or Vimeo or Pix or DAX or Frame.io. Gosh, we've got quite a few options these days. Anyway, so copy this, and then I will go, I'll just jump back to Avid again, because why not? We always end up there anyway. And I'll trigger my macro. So if I hit go, it's going to jump over to my mail. It's already added in the emails. Now this message box has came up on my other monitor, so I'll just bring this over. So edit stage, I'm going to say first assembly for this imaginary project. Edit notes. Assembly is coming along well. Still a few placeholders for our footage still to be shot. However, whatever, that's all I can think of right now. So imagine that will be our edit notes to go along with it. So if I hit OK here, it's going to fill out the subject field and then the rest of the email. Enter. And you can see it's filled it all out. So it's went, hey guys, please see below for download link of the latest edit. It's pasted our link. Assembly is coming along well. Still a few placeholders for our footage to be shot, however. So there's our notes. When you've all had a chance to watch down, we can jump on a call and talk it through. Cheers, Jack. Now you can tweak this formatting to be formatted as nicely as you like. You can see here it's just changed the font because I've copied this line from a note and then it's set the font going forward after that. But if you've just copied a link directly from your browser or from Frame.io or something, it won't do that. But this can be extremely useful because it's set the date to be correct. I like to automate as many things like dates and emails as I can, just to remove the possibility for human error, for you typing the wrong thing, pasting the wrong link, pasting the wrong information. Keeps you honest, keeps all your information correct, and you'll have less emails to retract. Right, now jumping back, we're going to take a look at our last example, which is going to be our level 3 macro. Now this example isn't too much more complicated than what we've already done. The reason why I've designated it a higher level is just because we're adding functionality to Media Composer that wasn't there before, and we have substrings. So our macro will begin with the prompt for us to make a decision on what we need to do, and depending on what we select there, it's going to separate us out into different tasks. So the purpose of the macro is to export a sequence that we have open to a variety of different formats. Now we can do this in applications like Resolve, where you can queue up different exports to go to different export settings. Obviously in Final Cut or Premiere, you can send stuff to Compressor or Adobe Media Encoder. And in Avid as well, you could export a master to go to a watch folder and then be recompressed in another encoder as well. But you can't do this for everything. For example, in AAF, you can't have be created by a separate encoder. You need to do that within Avid. So if you have your master timeline and you have to make a whole bunch of deliveries and different exports, here's one method how you could go about doing that in one fell swoop. So let's dive into the macro. Got a prompt for user input, export formats. The prompt's going to ask what type of exports do you need. And just for the purposes of this, I've got 3 options: H.264, a ProRes, and an AAF export. Now I have changed these just with this little arrow over here. You can change these variables to be different types. So I have changed these to a checkbox. Now you can have these to a slider, like a submenu, date and time, text, but for this use case, checkbox is going to be the most useful. So you can see it says 0/1 here. 0 is just going to be tick boxes not selected. 1 is it is selected. And then there'll be an OK and cancel once we've chosen these. And then I have 3 substrings down here, which are based on the if each option is chosen. So if H.264 is set to 1, as in if the tick box is ticked, then do the following. Shift E, which is my hotkey in Media Composer to export. Pause until all the following are true, and the screen contains the screen capped image that I've found. We used this same function in a previous workflow. Type the right arrow keystroke so that we're ready for renaming. And then I'm going to insert text underscore H264 by typing. So this just means that it's going to add this suffix to the end of our sequence name on export. A pause and then a mouse click, which is just going to select a designated folder from my Finder sidebar. Then another pause, and then another mouse click, which is set to go to specific coordinates relative to my screen cap here, which is the little export setting that comes up next to your presets in the export window. We also used this function in a previous script. I'm going to type the keypad 1 keystroke because I have a 1 prefix before my H264 export preset. So that'll select it, enter to choose it, another little pause, and then enter to begin the export. And then I have 2 more strings which are just very similar, one for ProRes and one for AAF. And in between them I have this pause. Now you can see this isn't pausing for a specific number of seconds. You can have the pause wait for a variety of different things. So I have it so pause until all of the following are true. And the following is that the front window of the front application, the title of that window does not contain export. So basically you're waiting until the front window that's up isn't to do with exporting, which will basically wait until the export's finished before doing the rest. Now this is a particularly useful little function if part of your script is to launch or switch to a different application, and you could have it pause and wait until the front application is this other application that you're switching to, because it might take a different amount of time depending on the workload at the time of your machine, how long it takes us to switch, and then it won't trip up your script. So that's a basic run through of the script and what it does. Let's look at it in action. I'll bring up say this one here, just a very short little sequence of 3 seconds and 20 frames so that it's not going to take too long. And then I'm going to hit my key to launch my macro, and I get export formats. What type of exports do you need? H264, ProRes, AAF. So my first example, I'm going to tell it to just do the H264. So I'll go H264. So I hit OK, and I'm going to raise my hand so you can see it's not me doing it. H264, it's renamed it, it's selected the preset, now it's exporting. Right, so now I'm going to switch over to Finder. As you can see, my H264 has been made. There it's there. If I bring up the inspector, it is indeed an H264. Right, now I'm going to delete that there. I'm going to switch back to Avid. I'm going to run my script again, but this time I'm going to select all the options. So, export formats. What do we need? I'm going to go H264, ProRes, and an AAF. I want them all. Then I'm going to hit OK. It should go through and make an H264, then a ProRes, and then an AAF. And it's going to select the different export setting that it needs each time. So I'm going to hit OK, raise my hands, and we'll see what it's doing. Made the H264, selected the right preset, that's good. Exporting that out. Right, it's come back. ProRes typed out, selected the ProRes, export preset, nice. And come back for the AAF. Nice. Cool. So now, put my hands down, I can tab back to that Finder window, and we can see we've got an H264, a ProRes, and an AAF. This ProRes is significantly larger than the H264, so you know it's done it correctly. And you could set this workflow to do as many different ones as you want. You could tailor it to whatever your specific production needs for onlining. Once you create that initial workflow, that initial script, you can tweak it to your heart's content and have it do exactly what you need. So wherever all of your online deliverables are, once you have your master timeline that's prepped and ready, you can hit go and it will make all of your deliverables. It's very useful, very handy, and it's just a great example of what macros can be used for. If there's a feature that you feel is missing from your desired application, like Avid, you might actually be able to add it, and you might be able to script it in there. So, highly recommend checking it out. Keyboard Maestro is very, very functional. It's been added to over the years, and it's a lifetime license. You can also get a fully functional, free trial. It doesn't have any limits on it other than a timer. I believe it's 2 weeks. So get stuck in, get scripting, and have fun with it, guys.
So guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. That was me going through macros and scripting for post. I really recommend grabbing Keyboard Maestro, and you can check it out. I'll have a link down below in the video description. You can get a free trial that is fully functional, not limited in any way, just timed, of course. I think it's 2 weeks, though I can't quite remember how long the trial lasts. But yeah, grab the free trial, have a play around with it, and then it's a lifetime license, so why not just grab it? So thanks for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you enjoyed it, if some of this is useful to you, if you're going to go down and download Keyboard Maestro now, then please give us a like, subscribe, and check out the other videos on the channel going through some great features in Media Composer, especially going into detail of the new version and switching over. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you back here for the next video. Cheers.